Hi, I'm Aussie Man. I've been studying Gann for over 20 years, and I've put this together for those who are new on the Gann journey, or for those who have been on the Gann journey for a while and are frustrated with where they're at. It's an honest, step-by-step plan to build you into a Gann trader in 3 to 12 months, prepared by someone who actually trades and who actually makes money from trading, that targets only specific Gann lessons so that you're not buried in thousands and thousands of pages, and focuses on making money, because that's why we all got into trading in the first place. Along the way, we realized there's more to this than money, and studying Gann is one of the most fulfilling and interesting and fascinating things out there. But at the end of the day, we got into this to make money, and once you're making money, you've got the time and the energy and the resources to learn more about Gann and some of the mind-blowing things that he taught. So if making money from Gann trading is what you're interested in, this video is going to help you. And I'll be covering a wide variety of Gann lessons in here, showing you what to study and when in order to give you the maximum benefit for your time. So let's get started. Firstly, welcome to the channel. I'm Aussie Man. My channel is dedicated to the works of W.D. Gann, the master forecaster and trader. It's here both as a tribute to Gann's work, but also as a beacon of light for all traders who are seeking better results. And if you're new to the channel, I've put together a playlist of videos up the top, which I think would be a good place for you to start watching. And if you find value from these videos, all I ask in return is that you click on the like button and leave a comment. I'd really appreciate both of those. It does help the channel grow. And if you'd like to stay up to date with my future videos, I tend to post once, maybe twice a week. Then you can click the subscribe button. Each Sunday night, I run the Forex form guide, which takes a look at Gann analysis in action on the major currency pairs. Because it's one thing to study Gann, it's another thing to actually put it into practice. So this gives you a little bit of practice each week. Before we get into the steps, I just want to quickly cover off why some Gann traders fail. Because people say, oh, if Gann's so good, why do Gann traders fail? Well, there's many reasons for that, of course, and many of those have to do with the trader themselves. We have to do a lot of work on ourselves as traders if we want to be successful. But why some Gann traders fail? Number one, they get lost in the sea of Gann information. That's why in this video, I'm pinpointing specific areas for you to focus on. A lot of Gann is repeated across his books and his courses, and you don't necessarily need to read it all. Number two, they try to do too much too soon. They hear about Gann's forecasts, they get all excited by them, and they try to jump straight to that level. They also try to take small trading accounts and turn them into large trading accounts very, very quickly. And that can be a recipe for failure as well. Gann takes time to learn, trading takes time to learn, and money takes time to acquire. Yes, there will be massive crash moves where you can make a lot of money really quickly, but they only come at certain times. In fact, if you study the law of vibration, there's generally one point in every cycle where you get a massive move, and you can track the cycles based on that particular move. And you can see those moves coming in advance and wait for them. I'm watching a potential move like that later this year for the Australian dollar in September. But outside of those times, markets don't always move that quickly. In fact, this year, 2025, on the Australian dollar, the first half, apart from a couple of key areas, the market has been pretty flat and sideways. A lot of traders will try and force trades in this area, jumping in and out and reversing positions and churning up a lot of capital doing that. So don't try to do too much too soon. Wait, and the opportunities will come. The Gann traders that fail also tends to ignore Gann's early lessons on trading and form reading. Depending on which version of courses like Gann's commodities course that you're reading, they have about 8 or 9 lessons in there. But the early lessons are all on charting and form reading and basic trading skills. But people don't want to know that. They want to jump straight to the end of the course into the master charts, the square of 9, all these fancy tools, because they think they can use it to make a quick dollar. And surprise, surprise, that never works. I've never seen a trader jump straight to that level and make a success of it. You have to build the foundation first, and that's what we're going to do in this video. Finally, they learn from gurus who either cannot or do not trade. These days, and sadly you don't always find this out until after you've spent thousands, if not tens of thousands of dollars on books or courses, many people who are actually teaching this stuff don't actually trade. Now, in theory, a lot of these people may know more than me, and I have no problem at all admitting that. I know a lot of stuff, I've researched a lot of stuff, but there's always somebody who knows more. But what I can offer is a pathway from the perspective of someone who actually trades this stuff. And you can see it each week in the Forex form guide. I put out my thoughts on the market. Sometimes I'm wrong and the market goes the other way. Often when you're wrong and the market doesn't go your way, you don't get into a trade in the first place, so it's not that big a deal. But don't believe anyone who says they never make a loss. Even Gann, in his peak time of trading, only had a success rate, and I say only, but had a success rate of 92%, which means he was still wrong roughly 1 trade in 10. As I said, I've been around Gann for over 20 years. I've traded it myself. I've researched it myself. I've taught it to others, and I stand by everything that I say here. What you're going to see now are the 12 steps that I wish I had at the start of my trading journey, because I would have gotten to where I am today a lot more quickly than I actually did. Before we do that though, a quick disclaimer: this video is for educational and informational purposes only and should not be considered financial, investment, or trading advice. I don't provide recommendations or guarantees, and I won't accept any liability for losses resulting from trading decisions based on the concepts discussed. The bottom line there, do your own research. This is not financial advice. Trade responsibly. So let's get into it. Step 1, do you want to be a trader? Now, before you go clicking away, hear me out on this one. Many people are sold the dream of trading without really knowing what trading actually is, and trading may not be for you. There are other ways to make money. Here in 2025, and if you're watching this in a later year, it's probably even better, but there are so many ways that you can make money. Is trading the way that you want to make money? You know, we get sold the dream. You can trade by the pool, you can earn bags full of cash, you can buy fancy cars, you can party and travel the world. But the reality is not everybody makes it to this level. And the truth that people don't tell you is that a lot of people fail to make money from trading, and many actually lose money. Trading takes time to learn, just like anything else. In Gann's first book, he spoke about doctors and lawyers and other professionals taking time to learn their craft before they go out into the world and start making money. Can you imagine a brain surgeon on their first day of university setting up a corner store saying, I'm going to make money doing brain surgery? It doesn't work that way. It takes time to learn. Trading is no different. Trading can also be stressful, and you can lose all of your money or even more if you don't know what you're doing. So again, you have to take the time to learn the ropes and learn how things work. Now, after all of that, do you still want to be a trader? Have I scared you off? Hopefully not, because the rewards from trading can be fantastic. And yes, there's money, and that's fantastic too. But for me, one of the big things has been the lifestyle as well. I have a daughter who's going on 3 who has not missed me for a day in her life. I've been here at home with her for the entire 3 years of her life. I'm not driving into work, spending hours commuting. And that's been really precious for me, and I hope for her as well. So to help you make your mind up on whether you want to be a trader, I'll run through a few quick slides and a few quick definitions. Trading is the act of buying and selling financial instruments like stocks or shares. So you hear about companies like Apple. They make iPhones. Shares are little tiny pieces in the company called Apple, and they're owned by hundreds, thousands, millions of people around the world. If you buy shares in Apple or any other company, you own a tiny piece of that company. Most traders will trade using either fundamental analysis or technical analysis. Fundamental is like accounting. You'll read the books, the balance sheets, the cash flow statements, all these things, and make a decision based on that as to whether this is a company that you think has a strong future. Whereas technical analysis will use pictures and charts, and that's what I tend to focus on. Gann trading, which we're going to talk about in the next step, is just one stream of technical analysis. There are thousands of different ways you can be a technical analyst. The reason I'm drilling down here is because it's important that you understand there are many paths that you can walk, and if this is not the right path for you, you're better off finding out now rather than spending 3 to 5 years of frustrating study only to realize, hey, this isn't really what I wanted. Another question to ask: do you want to trade or do you want to invest? And this is something that really doesn't get discussed. People conflate the two. Investors buy stocks for the long haul. They want to profit from things like dividends as the company makes earnings and shares them with the shareholders, and they want to profit from capital gains, which is when the price goes up. Depending on where you live, there can be some good tax advantages from dividends and from capital gains. Traders, on the other hand, will buy and sell frequently, sometimes many times in the same day, attempting to profit from shorter, sharper moves in the market. Clearly from that, trading is going to require a more hands-on approach, whereas investors will often just park their money and sit back and leave it for 5, 10, 20 years. Let's look at a couple of charts now and follow this through to the end because I'm getting to a point here. Firstly, here's the 1987 crash. This is on the Australian market. This is the Australian SPY 200 futures contract. And you can see from a price in September of around 2,400 points, the market crashed in about 6 weeks down to 1,000 points, losing over half of its value in just over a month from this point here. So you could have put money in shares. You might have thought, here's my $20,000. I'm going to buy and hold stocks for the long term. And you might have decided in September of 1987 it was your time to buy because the market's been going up all year. You jump on board, bang, you lose half your money there. The thing is, though, you only lose that money if you sell. We'll come back to that shortly. There's the 87 crash. A more recent crash was the 2008 global financial crisis, which funnily enough first came into the public's awareness back here in February of 2007. And the market had a mini crash, and then people thought, oh, good thing that's over. Then it reared its head again around June, July of the same year, and we had a bigger crash. And then the market rallied from there. Markets are very good at shaking off bad news until the time is right. And that's something that Gann believed. It's not the fundamentals, it's the technicals, it's all in the chart. And the market is timed. And that when the time is right, the market will move, not before then. So just remember that over a year before the crash happened, we all knew about it. We just perhaps didn't know how bad it was going to be. Now, I could point out a lot from this chart. Notice we had our big top, and then we came down and we broke all of these lows. That's when you know that the trend is down. You've cleaned out those lows, but that's not the place that you enter the market short. And short trading is when you make money from a falling market. That's beyond the discussion of today's video. But that's not the place that you enter a trade. It's when the market tries to go up again and fails. In this case, that was a 50% retracement, which Gann likes to talk about. And that was a great place to go short and make a lot of money from as the market tanked. But again, if you bought during this time, and at this point in Australia, they brought in new laws, temporary laws, where you could put, I think it was up to $1 million into your superannuation fund. They were trying to get people to boost their retirement accounts. So people were dumping a ton of money into their accounts, buying shares at this point, only for the market a year later to crash. So at this point, a lot of people have lost a lot of money. Now, thanks to a gentleman named Noel Campbell, he was one of the instructors at Safety in the Market back in the day. Around this point in the market, November, December of 2007, I moved my retirement savings and my parents' more significant retirement savings into cash, and they sat out the year in cash as the markets plummeted. So these things are knowable in advance. As I said, that call wasn't me. That was Noel Campbell. G'day, Noel, if you're watching. I'm sure Noel's retired with many better things to do by now, but that was a call from Noel. But that was one of my first big examples of someone calling a crash live before it happened, and obviously being able to profit from it as well. So again, note the similarities there. You buy around this point, about 6,600, the market loses more than half of its value. And that's something that investors have to contend with, whereas traders, if we're wrong, we get out for a small loss and we move on to the next trade. Here's another crash, even more recent. This was the 2020 COVID crash. Interestingly, it was December of 2019. We started to hear about this virus that was going around, but the markets didn't crash. They kept going up. And then we started hearing about countries closing their borders. We started hearing about how contagious the virus was and the virus spreading, but it wasn't until the time was right that the market absolutely collapsed there. Now, this one didn't fall quite 50%, but it was very close to a 50% drop, and it was a very wild move down. Now, we've spoken about crashes. These are the charts that people will often use to tell you, don't be an investor, you should be a trader. This is the chart that investors will use to counter that argument. They'll say, here's a long-term chart of the Australian All Ordinaries Index, or in this case, the futures, which is basically the same as the All Ordinaries Index. This is over 40 years of market action. There's the 1987 crash. Yes, the market tanked, but it rose fairly soon after that, although it did take about 7 years before we broke the top of that old 87 high. So if you bought at that time and the market tanked, it would be 7 years before you break even there. There's the 2008 crash, which was a lot more significant. Although, as you can see today in 2025, we are back above those levels up here. And there, of course, is the COVID crash there. So yes, investors will say markets crash. You just have to put your money in and leave it in long term. I'd encourage you, if you're interested in investing in indices, to do a lot more research than just listen to what I'm telling you here. So that's a chart that investors will point to. Here's a chart that I would counter with as a trader. This was the Great Depression, 1929 to 1932. And by the way, Gann spoke of 100-year cycles in the market. And would you believe 1919, 1920, there was a global pandemic that interrupted markets and interrupted countries. I didn't say 2019, I said 1919, 100 years before we had it. Now, it's interesting to watch. If we go back to this chart, this was the beginning of 2020. That was March 2020, the COVID crash low. Since then, the market has rocketed up. Can you think of the name given to the stock markets in the US in the 1920s? They were called the Roaring Twenties because it was a long, strong bull market year after year after year. And at the end of that, we hit the top in 1929. And that was at 386. That was the Dow Jones Industrial Average. And then it dropped to a price of 40. In other words, it lost 90% of its value in 3 years. Less than 3 years, 90% of its value. If you bought into the market at the top of the market, at the top of the hype, you would have lost 90% of your money. And many, many companies went under as well. Now, again, I'm not trying to scare you. I'm just trying to help you make informed decisions as to whether you want to be a trader or whether you want to be an investor. If you're young and starting out, you've just turned 18, and this is not financial advice, but if you're just starting out, you can probably afford, I say probably because I can't say for sure, but you can probably afford to just buy index funds, buy shares every time you get a spare 5 grand, 10 grand, because I know with the cost of living these days, 5 grand and 10 grand, that's easy, just chump change at the moment. But if you do save that money, you can just pop it into shares, earn your 5%, 7%, whatever they pay over that time, and grow your wealth over the next 20, 30, 40 years. That is definitely one way that you can do it. But at some point, markets do have these crashes, and investors do cop an absolute flogging. So just be wary of that. Another example, though, that investors have to deal with are sideways markets. This is 1963 to 1982 on the Dow Jones. And for most of that time, the Dow was fluctuating between 700 points and 1,000 points. It would go up, come back down, go up, down, up, down, up, down. So the market really went nowhere for about 20 years. So your money is sitting there. In the US, they don't really pay a lot in the way of dividends. So your money is just sitting there going nowhere. Traders who are active traders looking at this will trade the trends during this time. Look at a period like this. You've got a top, run down, lower top, lower bottom, lower top, lower bottom, lower top, lower bottom. You make your money, it turns around, higher tops, higher bottom, higher top, higher bottom, etc. You can look to trade the trends through there and take chunk after chunk after chunk out of the market. However, it does require a little bit more risk and it does require a lot more work. So which one is better, trading or investing? As an Australian, without an Australian financial services license, I'm not really allowed to comment here. However, if I did have an Australian financial services license, I'd probably say something like, more people are suited to investing than suited to trading. That doesn't mean that you're going to make money doing one or the other, but I think more people's personalities are suited to investing. You save some money, you put it away, you let it work and compound over time. Whichever path you choose, manage your risk. That's the key factor here. And that's one of the biggest reasons that traders fail as well, because they don't manage their risk. They let it get out of hand. You can also build strategies that incorporate both trading and investing. Some people will use trading tools and techniques to get into an investment earlier and then close that investment later down the track when it looks like it's due for a big fall. So you can do both of them. At the end of the day, I'd encourage you to think for yourself though, because we're all different. We're all individuals. We all have different skill sets, different personalities. Have a think, have a look into both of those before you commit and choose one way or the other. So step one, do you want to be a trader? Trading can be a wild ride and it's not for everyone. However, when you get it right, the rewards, in my opinion, and it's just my opinion, but when you get it right, the rewards are better than any other profession. Now, how can I prove that? It's because if you look at the FX markets, trillions of dollars, depending on who you ask in the particular day, but $4, $5, $6 trillion go through the foreign exchange markets, which we can trade. And I'm not recommending you trade Forex, but I'm just saying this is one market. Trillions of dollars go through each day. That means as a trader, you have almost unlimited income potential by trading markets because the markets are so big, no one can control or dominate them. You can literally, if you want to make $1 million, you can go and make that from trading. If you want to make $1 billion, you can go and do that from trading. In fact, there's the famous story about George Soros, who made $1 billion in a single day in September of 1992, trading the British pound short. So it can be done. I don't know any other profession where you can make $1 billion in a day doing that. Now, Soros started with a $10 billion account, which not everyone has access to, but at the end of the day, the money is still there to be made. And that was 1992. There's far more money, far more liquidity in the markets today than there was back then. So I think we've spent enough time on this. If you still want to be a trader, follow along and let's have a look at step two. Step two, you've decided to be a trader. Do you want to be a Gann trader? Because there are many, many ways to trade and Gann is not for everybody. Before you commit to being a Gann trader, you should learn a little bit about him and understand what you're getting yourself into. To do that, I recommend the first 40 pages of Gann's first book, which was Truth of the Stock Tape. Now, you can buy that from wdgann.com. There are other versions out there that you can probably find cheaper, but that's the original copy, which is probably what you want. And I'm sure if you look, you can probably find a PDF version online somewhere as well. It's been over 100 years since it was published. In those pages, you're going to learn about essential qualifications for trading as Gann saw it, and which I believe still stands true today. You'll learn some rules for trading that Gann gives you, and you'll get a feel for Gann's writing and teaching style too, which again is not for everybody. Some people find it a little bit hard. I find it really motivational and inspirational. I love reading Gann. I always feel better and more confident after reading Gann, something that I encourage everyone to give a go. Now, if you're not sure Gann is for you, you don't necessarily have to go out and buy the book. You can go and potentially borrow it from the library. I believe there are PDF versions online somewhere that you can download, but always, if you're downloading from the internet, just be wary of viruses, because there are people out there who aren't as honorable as you and me. But check those first 40 pages or so out and get a feel for who Gann was before you decide, I want to be a Gann trader. If you're new to Gann, here's a few things that may interest you. He was a legendary trader and forecaster from the early 1900s. He burst onto the scene in 1909 with the Ticker Investment Digest article, but he wrote his first book in the early 1920s. He was born in Lufkin, Texas on the 6th of June, 1878. Gann died on the 18th of June at the age of 77, which I'm sure he would have had a chuckle at, given how important he knew the number 7 was. He was reputed to have made over $50 million from the markets. Now, I say reputed because there's no evidence of that I have seen. And a lot of people say, oh, he didn't make that much money. If you think about it, he traded over a 50-year period, which is a long time. He would have spent a lot of money. He would have paid some money in taxes, and he may have hidden money as well. There are stories that he hid the money overseas, all these sorts of things. I can't prove that one way or another. I'm just telling you what the stories say. He was known for his accurate forecasts in both time and price, and we'll look at a couple of those in a moment. He could also compound money very, very quickly. In fact, in the Ticker and Investment Digest article, and I'll show you a link to that in a moment, he turned $130 into $12,000 in less than 30 days. Think about that for a moment. $130 into $12,000 in less than a month. That's not bad. And if you can do it with that amount of money, what could he have done with, say, $1,300? Food for thought there. He was also the first private US citizen to own an airplane. So let's look at a couple of Gann's forecasts now. Number one, he was famous for calling the 1929 crash and bear market. This was the curve that he put out in advance for 1929. You can check these dates for yourselves on the Dow Jones. You'll see not all of them are correct, but many of them are. And in the second half of the year, you can see it was bear, 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 all the way down there. And that was the September 3 top there. He initially had that as a slightly lower top, ended up being the extreme top. Perhaps his most famous call was the 1909 September wheat call, which was contained in the Ticker Investment Digest article. If you're not familiar with that, I have got a video on my channel where I read through that entire article for you. It's about 18 minutes long there, and that gives you a great insight into who Gann was and some of the things that he was doing. And that's one of the only places that you'll hear him mention the law of vibration, which is how he said he did his forecasts. Now, within that Ticker and Investment Digest article, there was this paragraph here. One of the most astonishing calculations made by Mr. Gann was during last summer, 1909, when he predicted that September wheat would sell at $1.20. This meant that it must touch that figure before the end of the month of September. At 12 o'clock Chicago time on September 30th, the last day, the option was selling below $1.08, and it looked as though his prediction would not be fulfilled. Mr. Gann said, if it does not touch $1.20 by the close of the market, it will prove that there is something wrong with my whole method of calculation. I do not care what the price is now. It must go there. It is common history that September wheat surprised the whole country by selling at $1.20 and no higher in the very last hour of trading, closing at that figure. Now, this is a chart that I found online. I believe it was done using timing solution software. You can see here was the summer. Obviously, Gann was in the Northern Hemisphere. It's the Northern Hemisphere summer, June, July, August. He's made the call there that the market must go to $1.20. August, pretty quiet. September, pretty quiet. There's the last day of trading. It's trading at $1.08 around here. Then by the end of the day, bang, it shot up to that point. Now, some people will say that was a fluke. Others will say that as a broker, Gann had access to contacts and that they would have all known something was up and something was going to happen. And that's how he knew at some point it must go to $1.20. I don't buy any of that. I've seen examples of this where a time and a price is nominated and the market got to those levels. I know that it can be done. However, I also know there's a lot of pieces to a forecast like that, and it's not where you start as a trader. But that's an example of what he could do, nominate a time and price that the market must go to. And if you think about that, it kind of pokes a hole in the old random walk theory. The one that interested me the most when I was starting out was the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor. And he mentions this in his novel, The Tunnel Thru The Air, which was published in May of 1927. some 14 and a half years before the attack on Pearl Harbor. But this is part of the story of Tunnel Through the Air. If you haven't read it, I won't spoil it for you. It's a great read. I love the novel. I know it's not for everybody, and it can be a little bit slow at times, but I really enjoyed that novel. But here's page 278 of the novel. The United States government, fearing that Japan would make the first attack on the Pacific coast, either around Los Angeles or San Francisco, rushed the battle fleet to the Pacific. This proved to be one of the greatest mistakes of the war. As soon as the battleships cruised into the Pacific, Japan attacked from the air with their noiseless airplanes and began dropping deadly bombs from great heights. The anti-aircraft guns from the decks of the battleships were powerless to reach the bombing planes at such great heights. Defeat was swift and severe, and only a few of the battleships escaped complete destruction from the first attack. Now that's written in 1927, but you could very easily use that paragraph of information to describe the 1941 attack on Pearl Harbor. Now again, some people will say, oh, he got lucky. He knew that airplanes were going to be the next big weapon in wars and Japan might have been the next adversary, and maybe he just invented that. Yes, maybe that's true in isolation. But if you add in all the other things that Gann writes about and that he teaches, it would not surprise me at all if Gann had a lot more knowledge than people thought he had. And an example of that is on page 82 of Tunnel Through the Air. Again, remember this is published in 1927. He says, or in this case, his character Robert Gordon says, it shows that wars are not yet over and that Europe will have troublesome conditions, and in fact the entire world must yet pass through a very evil period between 1926 and 1932. It also confirms both the major and minor cycles which indicate that the years 1928 and 1930 to 1932 are to be years of famine, depressing business conditions, and panic, not only in Europe but in the United States. The maximum evil of the great 1,000-year cycle, which will not be completed until 1932 to 1934, will bring serious troubles to the United States. Another bad period for the United States will be 1940 to 1944. Now think about that for a moment. Gann saying 1928 to 1932, depressing business conditions. What happened 1929 to 1932? We had the Great Depression. Another bad period for the United States, 1940 to 1944. That was World War II. Now he's off by a year there. The United States didn't enter the war straight away, and the war went on to 1945. But those are two pretty good calls. If you were going to point from between 1925 to 1945, in that 20-year period, if you were to highlight two periods of difficulties, it would be the Depression and it would be World War II. And Gann's nailed both of those in a book published in 1927. When you look at any of these in isolation, you can say, oh, he got lucky. But when you start linking them together and putting the pieces together, you realize this guy actually knew something. He actually knew a lot of things. And again, there it is on the foreword of Tunnel Through the Air, signed off on the 9th of May, 1927. Now, there is some evidence that the book was published and perhaps edited a little later in 1927, but it's not a book that was published, say, in 1945, looking back on history. It was done in advance. There it is, the Tunnel Through the Air. If and when you study this book, and as a Gann trader, you're probably going to want to study this book, but make sure that you get the copy with 418 pages or very close to that. There are other copies out there that have fewer pages, but Gann coded specific information on certain pages. And he used many different coding techniques in the book. So this is not how everything is coded, but some things are related to the page numbers, and a lot of that is going to be basically destroyed and impossible to figure out if you buy a different version, and that version only has 200 pages or so. And again, you can grab the book itself from wdgann.com. Gann actually sold his business to, was it Ed Lambert? And then after that, they sold that to Nicky Jones. And Nicky's passed away, sadly, but Nicky's son Cody runs wdgann.com. So you can find all of the original Gann stuff on that website. In addition to that, I have actually recorded the entire novel as an audiobook. You can find it in a playlist on the channel, and you can go through and listen to all of the chapters one at a time there. Now, in the beginning, you're not ready for all of this stuff, but it's still not a bad idea to start listening to it early, maybe a chapter a day or a chapter a week or something, and work your way through that, because you will have to go through this book several times before you can start pulling information out of it. Now, the information in Tunnel Through the Air is what I would call hidden or decoded or esoteric Gann knowledge. There are different types of Gann knowledge that you're going to come across. The first one is the fundamentals of trading. That's where you'll look at books like How to Make Profits in Commodities, and Gann gives you plain as day in black and white rules for interpreting and trading markets. You'll also find in the early lessons in the stock and commodities courses, similar lessons on trading and form reading as well. These are the lessons that most people overlook because they want to go to the fancy Gann stuff. But what they don't realize is that this fundamental Gann stuff, firstly, can make you really good profits by itself. And secondly, this is the foundation of your higher level Gann learning. I know people who know a lot more than me about Gann and astrology and numerology and Tunnel Through the Air, but who can't make money from trading because they haven't spent enough time focusing on the fundamentals of trading. It's really important, and we are going to start with that in a moment. After that, you've got your more advanced Gann lessons, and you'll find those in the WD Gann Commodities course and the WD Gann Stock course. Finally, you've got the, as I said, esoteric or secret hidden knowledge of Gann, which is up for debate. Some people say it doesn't exist. Others will say it's all in the Tunnel Through the Air, and that's where I believe he coded a lot of his best stuff. Having said that, a lot of his best stuff is there in your fundamentals of trading. I'm going to give you some specific areas to focus on as well, but it is all there, and you should make the most of it before going on to the secret hidden stuff, because in that secret hidden stuff, in the Tunnel Through the Air, and potentially as well in the book The Magic Word, yes, you'll find some hidden cycles there, but you'll also find that depending on who you ask, they will give you different numbers. So as an example, Gann talks about an airplane called Marie the Angel of Mercy. I know of at least 4 different versions going around where people say, this is Marie the Angel of Mercy, this is Marie the Angel of Mercy. Gann's talking about this cycle, Gann's talking about these planets, Gann's telling you this about it. And everyone's got different decoding. We all look at the same text and people come up with different versions of it. So it's not easy to go through and do that. I have to admit, I've gained significant advantage from mentors and people who know this stuff who have helped me get started on Tunnel Through the Air. It's not an easy road to walk. And even then, when you've got it, there is still that doubt of, is this what Gann really meant? At the end of the day, whatever you pull out of Tunnel Through the Air, make sure that you can relate it to a market chart and that it works consistently. Don't just find something that you think it is, see it working once and assume it will always work, because there can be coincidences in the market as well. And finally, just to help you make up your mind whether you want to be a Gann trader, here are some things people don't tell you about Gann. Firstly, there's much debate about whether Gann was a legend or a fraud. In fact, many of you are probably aware of an interview that Alexander Elder, Dr. Alexander Elder, I think, had with Gann's son, John Gann. And he claims that Gann's son told him that his father, W.D. Gann, made more money selling courses than from actually trading. Now, I don't have that book by Alexander Elder, but that's a story that gets thrown around a lot. There are also differing accounts of the value of his estate when he died. Some say he died penniless. Others say that he had millions stashed offshore. Gann's son, John, who Gann allegedly had a falling out with, and there's some pretty strong evidence that he did have a falling out with him, because in the book, How to Make Profits in Commodities, it was initially published, and John Gann was very prominent in that book. He was mentioned on the cover. His portrait was included in the book. And then in the reprint, which was about 10 years or so later, John is completely absent from the book. So there's clearly some kind of falling out there. But John said that Gann's estate was worth around $100,000 when he died. Now remember, this is 1955. $100,000. There will be plenty of people dying today in 2025, not specifically today, but in this year of 2025, a lot of people will die with a lot less money than $100,000. And that's in today's dollars. And the purchasing power of today's dollar is a lot less than it was back then. So back then in 1955, 100 grand, that was still a pretty useful sum. From my point of view, I think if Gann made $50 million, by the time you take out tax, and there were much higher tax rates back then, but you take out tax, you take out spending, you take out the money Gann spent on research. But I think it's quite possible that both are right. Maybe Gann did make $50 million, and maybe it was spent, maybe it was donated to charity, maybe it was invested in research, maybe it was offshore somewhere, who knows? And maybe John Gann was exactly right. Maybe that's the complete truth. There was only $100,000 left to him. But again, if there's been a falling out there, it's not outside the realms of possibility that perhaps Gann decided, you know what, you're not getting my money, or you're not getting a lot of my money. At the end of the day with Gann, you tend to get people on two opposite ends of the spectrum. There are people who say Gann was the most brilliant trader, investor, forecaster of all time, no debate. And you've got the other end of the spectrum where people say Gann was a fraud, he couldn't make money, all these sorts of things. My thoughts on that are that Gann was brilliant, but not perfect. So I am closer to the Gann was brilliant. I believe he was far beyond almost anybody, any of us, in terms of his knowledge and his abilities and his ability to retain and understand and decipher knowledge. He was just outstanding, probably second to none in his time and probably a long way ahead of his time as well. But at the same time, he was human, so he was also likely flawed. Gann himself admitted that he went broke 40 times while researching his work. I think it's in Truth of the Stock Tape that he writes that, but he was broke 40 times. You can imagine if you think you've got the holy grail of trading, how likely would you be to go in there and throw big money at it or throw your entire trading account at it because you're sure this is the one? And Gann had to learn the hard way more than once. Now, some of those times that he went broke because brokers went under, took his money. He went broke because banks went under and took the money. But he said he never lost his nerve and he could always come back from it. I can tell you from experience that in my early days of trading, I lost an entire trading account. And I can also tell you that a couple of years later, I saved up all my money, put the same amount back in, and I did the exact same thing and I lost the second account as well. Okay, they say history repeats because we don't learn our lessons from the past. And I've seen it. I can totally understand why Gann may have gone broke 40 times while learning this. However, I can also understand, given what Gann knew, how he could easily have made $50 million and probably a lot more from trading. Now, I love Gann's work, and you might be thinking, oh, there's a typo there, Aussie Dollar Man. In fact, that's a little clue there. I wasn't going to mention, I was just going to leave it, but then I remembered some of you may not have read Tunnel Through the Air or be familiar with it. In the Tunnel Through the Air, Gann mentions the word love a lot. If you take those first three letters of love, what could they be? Could they be an acronym, L-O-V? And what could that stand for? Could it be a law of some kind, perhaps of a vibration kind, some kind of vibrationary law? If you can't work out what I'm saying now, maybe Gann is not for you. Okay. I also love, there's that typo again. I also love that Gann left his work behind for us. Gann could have just kept all of this secret. My belief is that Gann understood the power of helping others, and he knew that if he helped others, that he would be helped himself to reach higher and higher levels of his studies and his research and his knowledge. So those are my thoughts on Gann. Step 3, at this point, if you want to go forward, it's time to make a decision. You have to commit. Do you want to be a trader? Yes or no? If so, do you want to be a Gann trader? Yes or no? There are other pathways to trading, and I'll talk about those in a moment. But if you've decided to be a Gann trader, the next thing to ask yourself is, am I interested in Gann trading or am I committed to Gann trading? Now, there's a very big difference, but studies show that those who commit to something, rather than just being interested in it, but those who commit have a massive advantage. And I've spoken about this in the past on the channel, but just a very quick reminder. There was a study done by Gary McPherson, I believe his name was, and he looked at students in school studying music, and he judged them on this scale over here. That's the Watkins-Farnham Performance Scale. Over here, these lines, the blue line represents students who had a short-term commitment to music. So they might have been learning an instrument because they had to do it that year at school. A medium-term commitment are students who liked music more. They were going to study music all the time that they were at school, but they had no thoughts of a career in music. Then you had the long-term committed students, and these are students who knew that they wanted a career in music. Maybe they wanted to be a music teacher, maybe they wanted to play in an orchestra, but they had a long-term commitment. Now, at the bottom of the chart here, you've got a low level of practice. So each week, maybe one session a week. You've got a moderate level of practice, so an increased amount of practice each week, and a high level of practice each week. So how committed am I and how often do I practice? And when Gary McPherson put the results together, there's a couple of very interesting things that he found. Firstly, looking at the short-term committed. If you were a short-term commitment, I'm just doing this because I have to, or I'm only doing it to the end of the year, no matter how much practice you put in, your results don't really improve that much. Okay, that's the first thing. Number 2, a long-term committed student with a small amount of practice each week is going to outperform a short-term committed student with a high level of practice. So again, it's not about how much time and effort you put in. This student here is putting in a small amount. This student is putting in a large amount. And yet this student here with the low level of practice, because they are so committed, they are actually performing much more highly than this student over here who's practicing all week. Okay? The reasoning behind this is our brains receive so many inputs every day, millions and millions of inputs each second. It can't process all of them. What it's looking to do is give us information that it thinks is relevant to us. Now, if it knows we are committed because we have a picture of ourselves, we see ourselves as a long-term musician, the brain says, oh, anything musical, this is important, I better pay attention. So when you go to a practice, it retains the lesson. It builds the skills more quickly. For us as traders, all we need to know is it doesn't matter how much time and energy we put into this. If we're not committed to this, if we don't see ourselves as long-term traders, we're not going to get the results that we want from trading. You have to have an image of yourself as a successful trader. When people say to you, what do you do? What do you want to be? You say, I am a trader. I am a trader. Don't worry about, I'm not making enough money at the moment. Forget all of that. You are either a trader or you are not a trader. Commit to this and watch what happens with your brain. I could go into a long tangent on this. I'm not going to, but commit to this and see what happens. Okay? Commit and practice and look at the results that you can achieve there just from commitment. Look at the huge jump, more than double, a medium term to a long term commitment there. So as a trader, you might say, I just want to be a trader until I've made, say, $5 million and then I'm going to retire. That's probably a medium term commitment there. But if I'm a trader, I want to be the best trader that I can be. I want to be a world-class trader. That's a long-term commitment there. Watch what happens to your results as you put in your work. Look at the efficiency that goes up there. Now, a question with Gann. Once I commit to Gann, do I have to go all the way with Gann? And the short answer is no. Gann himself wrote thousands and thousands of pages. You don't need to read them all. You don't need to learn them all. You don't need to learn every technique. Okay? Gann fundamentals in isolation are still very, very powerful. In fact, I met a trader who made a fortune from double tops and double bottoms. In fact, he was up over $1 million that year. And I thought, great, what's the secret? He said, I just trade double tops and double bottoms. And I said, are you serious? I said, what about time? What about squares? What about square of 9? I said, I just trade double tops and double bottoms. And I just got really good at them. And I just look for a particular kind of double top and double bottom. And that's all I do. He had no interest whatsoever about things like the sign of the prophet Jonas or Robert Gordon's 7 days, which Gann talks about in the Tunnel Through the Air. Didn't know, didn't care, didn't want to know. And to show you the power of double bottoms, there is a video on my channel. You'll see the thumbnail says Aussie dollar, US dollar trade makes 16 to 1 in just 2.5 days. That's a trade that I posted a couple of hours after I took it. And you can watch that unfold. It's live on the channel. It was done on the 9th of April, 2025. That trade was basic Gann fundamentals that we're going to be talking about in the upcoming steps. Now, quick question. What if I want to be a trader, but I don't want to be a Gann trader? That's completely fine as well. There are other simple systems out there. This is not a recommendation, but this is just an example. There's a lady on YouTube called Tori Trades, and all she does is trend line trading. That's it. She specializes in a few metals, I think, and then she just puts a few trend lines on different time frames, trades the 4-hour chart, and she's got some trading rules around that, and bang, that's all that she does. And that's just one example of technical analysis. You'll find hundreds and hundreds out there on YouTube if you want to walk a different path to Gann. So let's recap where we're at. We've been going for a little while. Step 1, do you want to be a trader? Maybe you just want to be an investor. Maybe you want to save some money, put it into the market, let the money work for you over time. And as the market goes up and the dividends go up, you grow your wealth slowly that way. Step 2, if you want to be a trader, do you want to be a Gann trader? Because as I said, there are different ways of trading. And step 3, commit to being a Gann trader. It's a little bit like in the original Karate Kid movie when Mr. Miyagi says, if you want to do karate, yes, that's fine. No, that's fine. But somewhere in the middle is a little bit like a grape going down the street. If the grape walks on the sideway, not that grapes can walk, but if the grape is on the left side of the road, fine. Right side of the road, fine. But if the grape's in the middle of the road, sooner or later the grape gets squished. Now, I'm sure that there are better analogies out there than from a 42-year-old karate movie, but that's a pretty good one. Decide if you're going to commit or not. Let's move on now to step 4. Step 4, once you've decided Gann is for you, is to learn some charting and trading skills. Note, I'm not saying go into Tunnel Through the Air and extract the law of vibration. I'm saying learn charting and trading skills. Learn to construct these two kinds of charts, bar charts and swing charts. Some of you are already trading using candlestick charts. That's fine. A swing chart is drawn from a bar chart, But a candlestick chart is pretty much the same as a bar chart, just displayed differently. So you can draw a swing chart from your candlestick chart as well. But you need to learn charting. On page 46 of the Wall Street Stock Selector, Gann shows you how to set up your charts side by side. And then you have to learn how to enter and exit trades and where to put your stop loss and all these basic things. These are basic trading skills. Many of you already have this. If you're brand new to trading though, you will need to learn these. Within Gann's work itself, study the first 2 to 3 lessons of the WD Gann Commodities course, and you'll be pretty right there. It will teach you plenty for constructing charts and entering and exiting trades and give you some rules for that. Note that I said study the first 2 to 3 lessons. There are different versions of the commodities course out there. Once you have the course, you can have a look and see. It'll be 2 to 3 chapters covering that basic stuff there. I learnt charting and trading skills and form reading skills, which is coming up next. I learnt them in a different order. I didn't learn them from Gann. I actually learnt them from Safety in the Markets Active Trader Program online training, and I'll talk to you about that in just a moment. But here is page 46 of the Wall Street Stock Selector. And you can see Gann lines up his charts side by side, so yearly, monthly, weekly, daily. You need to understand how to draw these charts. You need to understand how to turn this bar chart into a swing chart. You need to understand how to combine your analysis across multiple time frames there. Okay, and it looks easy, and in some ways it is easy, but it's not super easy. So you do need to spend some time learning this. And I promise you, if you put in the hard yards now and you learn this stuff first, then when you get to the more advanced concepts later, you'll be able to do a lot more with them. Because of the way that market forecasts work, some market moves are choppy. And if you don't have trading skills, you'll find yourself tearing your hair out because you're just burning money in the market as you're going long, short, long, short, long, short, because you don't understand basic trading and form reading skills. So that's crucial. As I said, I didn't learn from Gann initially. I learned from Safety in the Markets Active Trader Program. Back in the day, it was 2 courses. It was the Smarter Starter Pack and the #1 trading plan. These days, it's all combined into the Active Trader Program online training. And this is the only program that I recommend out of the thousands of Gann courses that are out there. This is the only one that I recommend. It was about the 4th or 5th program that I did, but it did a great job of summarizing Gann's techniques and putting them into a workable plan for me. Now, full disclosure, the person presenting in this is actually me. Okay, so I'm not saying, oh, yeah, this guy's great, he knows everything, and then pretend that it's not me. It is me. I studied the Active Trader Program in its early days. As technology improved, I did a stint of teaching at Safety in the Market, and I put this one together. But this course is the reason that you don't see me posting on this channel, hey, come and buy my trading course, because everything that you need is already there. It's in that course. You can go to safetyinthemarket.com.au and check that out for a free demo or to ask any questions, but it will teach you all of the charting skills, the trading skills, the price forecasting and form reading skills, where to get in, where to get out, how to take high reward to risk ratio trades. Like that double bottom trade that I mentioned earlier on the channel, that was a 16-to-1 reward to risk ratio trade. Using the lessons in here, I've taken trades in excess of 50-to-1 reward to risk ratio, and so have students of Safety in the Market. The stuff in there works. You can go through it in, say, a weekend, maybe a little bit more than a weekend, and within your first couple of months, you can be putting together some really good trades there and getting a lot of experience with there. This is not an ad for them. I don't work for them. I'm not there anymore. I've moved on from there. There are other people there now. They're good people. They're still my friends, but there's no association there. This is not like you see on YouTube. People say, oh, go and buy this fantastic product, and then you realize they're getting a commission on that. It's nothing like that. This is just me trying to be as helpful as I can, showing you that that's a great place to go to get a really good head start in your Gann charting, form reading, and price forecasting. Before we move on from step 4, a couple of points here. Don't buy expensive trading software until you know what you're doing, and even then you may not need it. I spent, I think, $4 or $5 grand on my first piece of trading software because I didn't have a lot of choices back then. I needed those Gann tools. These days, so many of the Gann tools that you need are available online for free, either in your broking platform or on a website like TradingView, which I'll talk about in just a moment. In my opinion, you should keep that money in reserve so that when you're ready to trade, you've got a trading account ready to go. Don't blow it all on expensive software because you probably won't even know what to do with it. The tools that are in there often don't come in until you're looking at the advanced Gann techniques, which is a later step. Even when you know what you're doing and you're ready to get software, most of what you need can be done for free in most platforms. So as an example, I'm going to show you one piece of software that I use, which is called TradingView. And if you want to check that out, just type in this link, bit.ly/AussieDollarman. That will take you to the TradingView page. Once you have visited the site using that link, if you then buy TradingView or any of their subscriptions in the next 90 days, I think you get $15 and I get $15. It's not that much, but we can both enjoy a couple of cups of coffee. So here is TradingView in action. You can see this is the Australian dollar, US dollar that I have here. You can change the time frame, any of these time frames that you want to use, daily, weekly, monthly. That's all of your charting done there. And across here, you've got a range of tools. They're all available in the free version of TradingView. I think it's fantastic. Here are the ones that I have in my favorites. I've got Fibonacci retracement. So Fib retracement, that's for your ranges resistance cards like that. You just click on and you can figure that out. Again, if you don't understand the tools, if you haven't got to that stage in Gann yet, don't worry too much about them. You'll have to work out how you want to use each tool once you learn the lesson. This next one is a trend-based fib extension. That's for taking a range, say from a low to a high, and projecting it forward, and then it's telling you different percentages of that range. You know, up here we've run a little bit more than 150% of the previous range, just as an example. I use the Gann Fan tool. Now, this is not, these lines, it will say 1 by 1, 2 by 1, etc. That's not using Gann's definition of angles. So when you get to that point in the commodities course, you'll have to work out a way of adjusting these to be a true 1 by 1 angle, which is 1 point per day or 1 point per unit of time. But you can get a lot of value out of it anyway using the TradingView tool. I've got a trend line, which is fairly straightforward there. You can just run from a high down to your low there. When the market breaks out there, it's not a tool that I use a lot, but it's there for certain things. That's a trend angle. It will simply tell you the market has run up at an angle of 71.29 degrees there. That is the trend angle. I've got a horizontal line, which, would you believe, draws horizontal lines? If you believe that, would you believe what the vertical line does? So there you go. And you can just double click on these. You can go into the properties and you can change them around. Change whether they're thin, you can fade them out a little bit, you can make them thicker, all these sorts of things. It's pretty good. I find it pretty easy to use. What else have we got there? These are cyclic lines for repeating cycle lengths across your charts. Again, that's probably in the future. Bar patterns is an interesting one. This one's a little bit fiddly. Bar patterns, or bars pattern, it says, you can draw over a particular period of the market, and it will take those bars. Then you can actually pick that up and you can move that along, and you can see if the market is repeating a previous pattern. Now, this comes into play. It's one of the last things that you'll learn on your Gann journey. It's the mathematical sequences that tell you which part of history is repeating on any chart. Gann gives you clues in the commodities course and the stock course, telling you to look at things like 10 and 20-year cycles, but he doesn't tell you how to know which one is going to repeat and for how long. There's a great quote from Gann's 1929 forecast, or his forecast review. And obviously this was written after the fact, but he says, do you know of any other economic investment or advisory service that was able to predict the 1929 stock panic 1 year in advance? He says, my forecast was based on my master time factor and mathematical interpretation of the return of cycles. So what he's saying is history does repeat, but you use mathematical interpretation, not astrology, not astronomy, but mathematical interpretation to tell you when the cycle is going to repeat. So when you have that, that's when your bars pattern comes into play. You can draw that pattern over the past history and you copy and paste it to the current market, and you can track the market that way. Then you've got simple price ranges. This tells you what a price from, say, a low up to a high is, and that tells you that was 53 ticks. Over here, 53. And then you've got the same tool there called date range, and you'll find them all in this column here. You just have to go into each one at a time, and you can see which ones are in there. But the date range there, for example, from the low up to the high there was 32 bars or 40 bars up there. There's a good time frame. We see the number 40 in the Bible mentioned quite a bit, 40 days and nights. We saw 40 days and nights of rain in the story of Noah, but there you go, 40 hours up from the low up to that high there. Then I've got an arrow tool. That's mainly for when I'm doing a presentation. If I want to demonstrate something, I've got a rectangle tool. It draws a rectangle. And then finally, the ellipse tool as well for drawing an ellipse. Okay, so you can play around with those. That's the tools that I use in TradingView. They are all available in the free version of TradingView. Now you might be thinking, geez, all this great stuff. What do I need to buy it for? Now, the only reason that I bought TradingView, and this is not a recommendation, but the only reason that I bought it is so that I can set my charts up like Gann did. You can set up 4 charts side by side. So you might have, say, for example, over here, you've got the Australian dollar. You might have a monthly chart here. And you can see that's all one monthly move up there. And then over here, for some reason that's gone to the British pound, but I'll just pop that back to the Australian dollar. And I'll change that to a weekly chart. And now all of a sudden I can have my monthly, and I can break that down. That same monthly move, I can see how that monthly move looks on the weekly chart. Okay, on the monthly chart, that's all one move. On the weekly chart, we had a run up and then a pullback, and now we're running up again over here. So that's why I have the paid version of TradingView. Now, I don't know, I'm not sure if you can just set up a bunch of tabs and then minimize them and just have them side by side. You may be able to get around it that way, but that's the main reason that I bought TradingView. So check TradingView out. I think it's really good, and there's a good chance, at least in the early stages, that you can get through using TradingView just using the free version. It's that good. If you do decide that you want to buy TradingView, just a quick hint, in November they have the Black Friday sales. You'll usually be able to get it for 50 or 60 or sometimes even more % off. You'll get a really cheap deal to buy it for a year. And if you're watching this and it's getting close to November and you want to buy it, just hang on for that Black Friday, or maybe go on a monthly plan until you get to that stage, and you can get some really big savings there. So in step 4, you've learnt some charting skills. You've got charts on the board. You know how to construct them. You can do that by hand, or you can do it by software, or you can do a combination of both. Step 5 is now to learn some form reading. This is where we interpret the trend and we determine whether the trend is weak or strong, and we start looking for potential trading setups, potential turning points in the market. Now, form reading as a general topic covers things like market patterns, such as double tops and bottoms or signal bars. It covers sections of the market. It covers the concept of overbalance in price and time. And it covers an introduction to price forecasting. It is one way or one method that Gann used for his price forecasts. As a topic, it's basically completely contained in section 2 of Gann's book, How to Make Profits in Commodities. In that book, he'll say, do this technique on wheat or any other commodity, but actually you can use that technique on any market whatsoever. Of course, you would test that first to prove it to yourself, but I use these techniques on all markets. I mainly trade the currency markets, but they have worked the same way on the different markets that I follow. So section 2 of How to Make Profits in Commodities, it's also covered in full detail in Safety in the Markets Active Trader program that I mentioned earlier. And each week on the Forex Form Guide, I do give you examples of form reading as we look at the major currency pairs. And there it is, the Forex Form Guide. That goes out at 7 p.m. Sydney time, Sydney, Australia time, every Sunday night. Again, on the left there, How to Make Profits in Commodities. That's a chunky book. Section 2, form reading, is worth the price of the book alone, many times over. And of course, I've already spoken about Safety in the Markets Active Trader program. Now, once you've got some charting skills and once you've got some form reading skills, you can start thinking about trading. You're not going to be trading just based on your charting skills. Okay, you need the charting and the form reading skills. So you've learned some charting and trading skills. You've learned some form reading. Now you build a trading plan. So if you're thinking, well, what about Gann's secrets? They're coming, I promise. But first you need to put together a trading plan. You're going to need rules for entering a trade, exiting a trade with both a stop loss and a profit target. So whenever I take a trade, I always have a profit target and I always have a stop loss. I don't always know when I get into a trade. I might enter a trade here, I'll buy something and I'll have a stop loss worked out. I'll always know where I put my stop loss. It'll be just down here. And then I don't know, is the market going to go this high or this high or this high? I don't know, but I'll pick a high level and I'll put the profit target in, because sometimes news comes out and the market spikes up and it will take that profit target and you won't be watching it and you'll miss it. So I just put a big profit target on. It doesn't cost anything to have that on. And if that gets touched, great. You bank a nice big profit, you move on to your next trade there. So you need rules for entering and exiting a trade. You also need rules in your trading plan for money management. So how much are you going to risk? How many trades are you going to have on at any one time? How much margin are you going to use, etc. And you need rules for your psychology, managing your fear and your greed. So what happens after you take a loss? I've spoken about this a few times on this channel, but I've grouped my trading plan, my actual physical trading plan, down into an acronym called SMART. And that stands for small risk on entry, moving the stop loss to break even quickly, accumulating positions with the market's money, reading the market, so actively reading the market as it unfolds because you're getting more and more information with each price bar, and finally taking profits. An example of a smart trade is this double bottom trade that I showed on the Australian dollar that made a 16-to-1 reward to risk ratio in just 2.5 days. And you can watch that on the channel. It's in the new to the playlist section up the top. But here was the trade. I used a 15-minute chart to enter. We had a double bottom setup. So there's your first bottom. Look at the bars here on the market. We broke that low and then we went down a little bit further. But see these little dashes on the right-hand side? So the vertical bar here, that's the highest price the market reached during this price bar. This is a 15-minute bar. Each bar is 15 minutes. And then that's the lowest the market reached. And the little dash off to the left is the open for that time period. The little dash off to the right is the close. See, we rallied really hard. We broke that low. So often when a market breaks a low, it kicks onto the downside. But here it closed right up near that low. I knew on the next bar up, if we broke the high of that bar, that turns our swing chart up, and it tells us, there's not a guarantee, but there's a strong chance this was a false break double bottom, which is one kind of setup that I like. A false break double bottom means it's falsely broken the first low, and it's kicked off strongly to the upside. So using a 15-minute chart, I'm able to get in with a very small risk on the trade. In this case, it was about 22 points. I can often get in with as little as 8 or 10 points risk on the Australian dollar. So that's step one of my smart trading plan. If I think this is the greatest trade in the world, but I can't get a small risk on entry, I still won't take it because the reward to risk ratio just doesn't make sense to me. So that's step one, small risk on entry. Now, an hour later, we're trading up here. Okay, 4 15-minute bars, 1, 2, 3, 4. We're trading up here, and I got into the market down here. I like to move my stop loss to break even, which is here. Because if the market goes from up here all the way back down here, it's probably going to go further. It's a false move. It's going to stock me out. By doing that, within an hour of being in the trade, A, I've taken my risk off the table, and B, I've taken all the stress and emotion out of the trade. Now I just sit back and enjoy the ride. Let the market do whatever it's going to do. I have the option of the third letter there, A, which is to accumulate additional positions using the market's money. And what that means is as the market goes up, I buy some more, and then I have a new break-even point. That means here, that's where I get in. So if the market comes back down and touches that point, I get out for a break-even if I have a stop loss there. If I buy more, I have to lift that break-even point a little bit higher, but I can do that with the market's money. So I'm increasing my position, but I still have zero risk on the table, if that makes sense. So anytime you add, you've got a higher base price. So you just move your break-even up to your combined entry price for all your positions, and your platform will tell you what that is. And you'll have a break-even. And again, no stress, no risk, but a larger position again. Then I just read the market as it unfolds. In this case, I got over a 20-to-1 trade out of that April low. That was a nice law of vibration low on the Australian dollar. And the trade unfolded as expected. It actually went a little bit higher, but not that much higher after that. So I took my profit as planned, and that was a pretty smart trade in the end. SMART as an acronym came from my 2 decades of trading, or many, many years of trading. It's been years in the making, but I've adapted that to suit my personality. I know with a small risk on entry, and you do that by trading lower time frames for a bigger picture move. Now, you don't just sit there on a 15-minute chart. You have a bigger picture viewpoint of the market in mind, and then when you're getting close, you can look for a sneaky entry on a smaller time frame to lower your risk there. Or sometimes, if you get a really strong price forecast there, you can buy right on the price forecast with a tight stop as well. But I knew that if I can get a small risk on entry, that A, my reward to risk ratio increases, because if I'm risking 100 points on the trade, the market's got to move 100 points for me to make 100% of my risk. But if I only risk 20 or 10 points, the market only has to go a little way, and I'm making 1 unit of risk, 2 units of risk, 3 units of risk. So for example, if I'm risking $1,000, the market's just got to go a little bit. I make 1,000, make another 1,000, make another 1,000. But if you're entering on bars like this, see this massive bar here? And if you've got a huge risk there and you enter here for a short trade, the market's got to go all this way. Now you're risking 1,000 if you're wrong. The market's got to go all that way just to make your first 1,000, and all that way again to make your second 1,000. And it doesn't always do that. So small risk increases my reward to risk ratio on the trade, and it lets me do step 2, which is move my stop loss to break even a lot more quickly. See down here, if you got in on this massive bar here, you're not going to move your stop loss to break even too early because the market will at some point come back and test that. But here, it's had such a strong move up that you can move your stop to break even knowing that should the market go all the way down there, it's probably going to continue down there. That's a little bit of form reading there. We do that each week on the Forex Form Guide. And again, I learned all of that from Safety in the Markets Active Trader Program. If you are a Gann trader, you'll probably buy several courses over your Gann trading lifetime. And that is one that should be pretty high on your list to get the basics right from the get-go. So small risk, quick break even. That allows me the flexibility to add to my position and then let the market run. And it makes for a pretty nice low risk, low stress trade. So now that you've got a trading plan in place, now you can start looking at your advanced Gann techniques. If you jump into the advanced Gann techniques straight away, a couple of problems show up. Number one, it's hard to make any sense from them because there's too many techniques floating around. And number two, you don't really know how to trade them because you don't have a basis to work from. You're like, oh, if I watch 30 days and 45 days from these lows, that might give me a turning point. But hang on, I've got 30 days from this other low here and 60 days from this other low here. What do I do with it all? That's why you need to have that trading plan first. And then your advanced Gann tools that you use supplement and enhance your trading plan rather than make it harder and harder and harder to enter into a trade. So when you've got a working trading plan, then you can start thinking about these advanced Gann techniques. And the two places that you're going to find these advanced Gann techniques are really the WD Gann stock course and the WD Gann commodities course. There are advanced concepts taught, some hidden, some in plain sight in Gann's other books, but these are the two places that you want to focus on. I would suggest choosing one to begin, stock or commodities. I like the commodities course, but that's because I did that one first and I've probably put more hours into it, but I do really like the commodities course. But pick one and work your way through it over time. If you want original copies, you can go to wdgann.com. Also, at this point, you should start, if you haven't already done so, reading or listening to the Tunnel Through the Air. Again, I've got the audiobook on the channel, but start reading or listening to the Tunnel Through the Air. You will need to go through it a few times before you start to grasp some of the concepts and recognize some of the repetition in there. And whenever Gann's repeating something in there, he's drawing your attention to something. So you've got to find what's repeating, what's mentioned in there a lot of times. So again, there's the Tunnel Through the Air, and that's a reminder of the audiobook on the channel. Step 8 is to enhance your trading plan. So you've got your existing trading plan. Now you've studied some advanced Gann. Now it's time to start thinking, where and how can I include some of this advanced information into my trading plan? So it takes time to learn all that Gann has to offer. I said right from the start, this is going to build you into a Gann trader in 3 to 12 months. I can't see you doing it much more quickly than 3 months because of the amount of work and also because of the fact that you need to live through a couple of examples to make sure that you understand how this all works. Keep in mind, you'll never have a perfect trading plan. Okay, it's always going to be adapted and changed and tweaked as you learn, gain experience, discover new techniques, etc. So as you learn those new techniques, gradually add them in to enhance your trading plan. But as you do so, beware of analysis paralysis. If you have 15 things that you have to check before you take a trade, it's going to be very, very hard to have them all pointing in the one direction. For me, I have a 3-step process that I follow. I have a forecast date, which comes from Gann cycles. There are big cycles and there are small cycles. I use a small cycle that gives me 4 to 6 dates per month, and I tie that in with my larger cycles to trade in the direction of those larger cycles. So I don't take every trade that is on offer, but I start with a forecast date. There's only 4 to 6 times a month that I'm looking to trade. From there, on that date, I'm looking for a trading setup on that date. There are 4 kinds of setup that I use. Double tops and double bottoms that I spoke about earlier are one kind of setup there. The rest you will find in that Safety in the Market Active Trader program. And then once I've got a forecast date and a setup shows up, then I put my smart trading plan into action. And it starts with the S. If I can't find a small risk on entry, doesn't matter that I've got a forecast date and I've got a strong setup. If I can't get a small risk, I just leave it, or I wait for a pullback to potentially give me a better entry later. That's it. That is the biggest piece of trading advice I can give you. David Bowden, who was the founder of Safety in the Market, said that the biggest advantage that you've got as a trader is that you don't have to be in the market all of the time. And I think that's a massive advantage that we don't always follow. But for me, another massive advantage is our ability to choose which trades we take and which trades we don't. So as a trader, a small risk on entry really is your biggest friend. As I said earlier, it opens up so many doors for you. It increases your reward to risk ratio, and it lets you move that stop to break even, crucially, very early, to suck all of the emotion and stress out of the trade, and it becomes a lot easier to hold on while the trade unfolds. Now, as you're enhancing your trading plan, a few things to keep in mind. Number one, focus on one time technique at a time, and focus on one price technique at a time. Don't try and mix it up and say, oh, I've studied 5 things, let's try and slot them all in. Pick a time technique, get it in there. Pick a price technique, put it in there. If later on you find another time technique and it's better, consider, do these 2 time techniques that I've now got work together, or should I replace my older one with my newer one? As I said, look at my plan earlier. There's only 3 things. I've got my 4 to 6 dates each month that I watch, and I know them for years in advance. I've got my setups. There's only 4 kinds that I look for. And when I have a setup on my date, I look for a small risk on entry. That's it. That's 20 years of trading and just bringing it down to what works for me and what I can use on my market. Whatever you do, test your techniques thoroughly before including them in your trading plan. If they add value, bring them into your trading plan. If not, just leave them out for now. There's no rule that says if you're a Gann trader, you must use every technique, or you must have squaring time and price, or you must have the square of 9. Work your way up to it, starting from the foundation, starting from the fundamentals, and when you're ready, if the techniques prove their worthiness to be in your trading plan, bring them in. If they don't, leave them out. Now we come to step 9, and what can I say about step 9, tunnel through the air decoding? We've decided to be Gann traders, and we've committed to that. We've worked through the fundamentals. We've built a trading plan. We've tackled some advanced work and enhanced our trading plan using that. Now we come to the big guns, tunnel through the air decoding. And really, what better way to sum it up than Anakin Skywalker from Revenge of the Sith saying, this is where the fun begins. It is a heap of fun going through Tunnel Through the Air, but it will take you, you're talking hundreds of hours over many, many years here. I've put together a couple of videos for you. One is Tunnel Through the Air Decoding, Where to Start, and the other is Recommended Reading for Gann Researchers. That will cut down your list of Gann books to read from a couple of hundred down to about 20. So check both of those out before tackling Tunnel Through the Air, because there are things in Tunnel Through the Air that are actually quite obviously stated, but if you don't have the proper background, it's not going to make sense. You're not going to recognize what Gann is giving you. He's literally put some things in plain sight. Most of it is coded and hidden, but there are some things in plain sight that you can stumble across and get great value from. Let's have a quick look at a chapter from Tunnel Through the Air. This is chapter 7, Future Cycles. It starts on page 75. And Gann tells you how he does his forecasts. He says, my calculations are based on the cycle theory and on mathematical sequences. Not just one thing, it's cycles and mathematical sequences. History repeats itself. That is what I have always contended, that in order to know and predict the future of anything, you only have to look up what has happened in the past and get a correct base or starting point. My authority for stating that the future is but a repetition of the past is found in the Bible. Moving on to page 78, I haven't highlighted anything because the whole page is important, as is most of Tunnel Through the Air, to be fair. Gann talks about things becoming popular again as another proof of history repeating itself, and shows there is no new thing under the sun, but we simply resurrect the old ones. How do I forecast future cycles, you may ask? In order to forecast future cycles, the most important thing is to begin right. For if we have the right beginning, we will get the right ending. In other words, anchor your cycles at the correct points. If we know the cause of the effect, then there can be no doubt about predicting the future event or effect. I have always looked for causes, and when once I determine a cause, I can always be sure of the effect or future event which I predict. It is not my aim to explain the cause of cycles. The general public is not yet ready for it, and probably would not understand or believe if I explained it. Gann goes on, in every law of nature, there is a major and a minor, a positive, a negative, and a neutral. Therefore, in cycles, there must be a lesser, a greater, and intermediate cycle, or cycles within cycles. Like Ezekiel says, wheels within a wheel. Time is the great factor that proves all things. The measurement of time first originated and is based on the Earth's motion upon its axis. One of the smallest cycles, or time factors, which repeats regularly in things that are very active and have a high vibration, is the 4-minute cycle. The reason for this is that the Earth moves 1 degree for every 4 minutes. The next cycle is 24 hours, the complete time required for the Earth to make 1 revolution upon its axis. So there's an example of a page in Tunnel Through the Air where Gann is actually telling you pretty straightforwardly what he is doing. He's using cycles and mathematical sequences. And he's saying that history does repeat. There's nothing new under the sun. And he's telling you there are major and minor cycles. And this one's an interesting one. I didn't find that out until much, much later. But a positive, a negative, and a neutral. And that all ties in with Ezekiel's quote on wheels within a wheel. But time is the great factor that proves all things. And that's a quote that you'll find repeated in Tunnel Through the Air more than once. And you can find the Tunnel Through the Air Chapter 7 in the playlist on my channel within the Tunnel Through the Air audiobook. So, Tunnel Through the Air decoding. What are we looking for when we're going through this? Firstly, we're looking for time cycles. Gann codes these in a number of places, and there are two main kinds of cycle. Number one is planets. Take the second last letter out of that, and that gives you a very big clue as to where Gann has hidden time cycles in Tunnel Through the Air. That's one kind of cycle. Planets move around the sun, and we track them using degrees rather than days. Okay, so when you're dealing with planets, you're dealing with degrees. There's another kind of time cycle which are just numbers or day counts. A lot of people say that when Gann uses numbers like 90 days, he's really hiding planets in plain sight there by saying 90 days instead of 88 days, which is how long it takes Mercury to go around the sun. However, while that may be a case and may be partially true, please understand that there are two kinds of cycle in Tunnel Through the Air. There are the planetary cycles and there are the number cycles or the mathematical or the law of vibration cycles. And they are two different things. You've also got price forecasting using advanced techniques in Tunnel Through the Air. Every high or low point in a cycle has a mathematical price target that it is going to. Gann says every top and bottom is mathematically related and can be worked out in advance. Now, if you're wondering, how does Gann encode price into the Tunnel Through the Air? Well, think about it. Knowing the price of every high and low in advance in your trading arsenal, that would be a pretty big gun to have in your trading, wouldn't it? A very big gun. You've also got mathematical sequences as well in Tunnel Through the Air. As Gann said, history repeats. And the mathematical sequences will tell you which cycle is repeating and for how long and when it's going to start and when it's going to stop. And my understanding is that you can do that on all time frames. So many of you are familiar with, say, a 10-year or a 20-year or a 30-year cycle that Gann talks about in Master Time Cycles. That is one kind of cycle. But there are many kinds of cycle. Gann says watch those. Watch the 5 years and the 7 years and the 7.5 years and 15 years and 90 years and 1 and 2 and 3 years. And he gives you all of these numbers, but he doesn't tell you which one is going to repeat. But if you look at his forecasts year by year, you'll actually find he was often able to predict which year was going to repeat. So he knew something there. And he tells you it's by using mathematics that you'll know which cycle is going to repeat. So for those who say Gann is all about astrology and the planets, keep in mind that Gann himself indicates that that may not be correct. Now, there's also way more in the Tunnel Through the Air. You've got things like financial astrology. You've got things like your health. Gann himself was very interested in using the techniques that he had for calling lottery numbers and predicting the winners of horse races, all these kinds of things. It's up to you to decide how far you want to take this stuff. Okay, you can take it a very, very long way, but at some point you want to get on with your life and enjoying the money that you've made. So a quick note to end on here, the Tunnel Through the Air is not for everybody. It's going to take a lot of time, effort, and preparation. If you need some help, you can email me at aussiedollarman@gmail.com, but I don't know all the answers. So I'm not some guru who's here who's going to say, oh yeah, come to me, I know all the answers, I'll tell you, listen to me. I'm a student like you. I'm on the same journey as you. I'm just probably a little bit further ahead of some of you. I'm not assuming my audience here, but that's the truth. When you've been studying something hard for 20 years, you tend to learn quite a bit about it. But I don't know all the answers. And if I did, I wouldn't give them all to you anyway. It is a journey. I can perhaps offer some guidance at various points and point you in certain directions or steer you clear of certain things. But it is a journey that ultimately you have to walk and that you are responsible for. But if I can help you, I will do my best to do so. So now we come to step 10, other people's work. One of the things that I did really early on, which was a mistake, is try to read every book and course and go to every seminar, webinar, whatever I could to learn about Gann and see what other people thought about Gann. And that has its place. You can learn a lot from other people. However, it's also potentially going to confuse you and lead to analysis paralysis. There are many, many books and courses on Gann, and I know because I've got many, many of them on my bookshelves. Over time, you're going to realize two things. None of them are perfect, and some of them are full of crap. Okay, and there's no polite way to say that. You look at them and you just think, how on earth do you make that conclusion from Tunnel Thru the Air? Most books have some value in them, but some are just rubbish, and it's up to you to learn to discern which is which. Interestingly, though, almost no one will recommend you to other Gann people for you to check out. You'll notice that in courses, they won't say, oh, and check out my colleagues here. A common factor in the Gann field is that people build themselves or are built up into gurus, and then they start talking as if they have all the answers and they know everything. Whereas in my experience, none of them know everything. There's some good stuff online, and it is starting to creep online a little bit more. To my knowledge, the original online source of true Gann teaching is a man known as BA, who seems to have disappeared these days. I don't know if you people are looking for him out there. I do know his name, but he goes by an alias, so I'll respect that. But BA, I've learned a lot from his YouTube channels, which I will share with you in a moment. And he's one of the few teachers out there whose work that I would recommend that you explore, because you can gain some insights from it. Just a warning, he doesn't make it easy. Firstly, he will show you things that are actually good things, but they're 30 steps ahead of where you are now. And you will literally, you'll not be able to do anything with it. You'll have no hope of doing anything with it. But he's putting it out there for you. So once you've walked the path a little bit, you'll actually get a lot more value out of some of his videos that are up there. Okay. The other way he doesn't make it easy is he can come across as a little bit arrogant at times, a little bit cocky, but who am I to judge? So these are his YouTube channels. He actually has 3. They are spread around 3 channels. The first and the main one is just called Gann Trade. You'll see it's at Gann Trade 6, so you just type in Gann Trade and that will come up. And there's some really good videos on there. There's also Gann Wheels, which is the second one, and Gann for Forex, which is the third one there. And again, there's some videos are repeated on the channels, some are different, but there's some interesting stuff on there if you want to check that out. In terms of individual videos, there's a great little 6.5-minute video called Layers Within Layers. That's on the Gann Trade channel. That will give you a really good understanding of how the cycles in Tunnel Thru the Air work in conjunction with each other. So you'll see all the cycles on screen at once. And think of the cycles as offering pressure in the market. So here you've got upwards pressure in the market. Here you've got downwards pressure in the market. Here, for example, you've got some cycles offering downward pressure and some cycles giving upward pressure. So it's a little bit choppy and sideways through there. But that's what we're looking for with the cycles, downward pressure. If there's downward pressure, we look for short trades. We may not find short trades, but we look for short trades. If there's upwards pressure, we look for long trades where you buy and you look for the market to go up. But that's a good video that sums up the cycle work. The purple cycle that you see there is a larger law of vibration cycle. The other colors are planetary cycles. Another video is Power of W.D. Gann's time cycles. You can also find that on the Gann Trade channel. And finally, there's this video here, Secret of the Line, which shows you a possible end point for you as a trader. If you can get to the point where you can draw these lines on, so from a low up to a high, you can draw that line on before the move happens. So obviously it would be very handy in a move like this, for example, and that may be an end goal for you where you say, that's as far as I want to go with this stuff. If I can do this, I'll stop studying Gann. That's one potential exit point for you. But it's also important to look at it. This is how cycles work. So for example, you've got a high here running down to a low. That's your price target. See how the market reaches that target in 2 days? Now it's got to muck around for a few weeks while the market gets to its time cycle point that it's going to take off from. So it runs down a bit, then it runs up a bit. And in those choppy parts, it's hard to know what's going on until you've got your next time date there. So for me, you'll see me post dates sometimes on the channel. When I have a date, if something like this happens and I'm not sure what's going on, I just wait for my next date to come. But you'll see they're not always, even at a very, very high level of Gann, you're not always going to get to the point where you can go from a low to a high to a low to a high without getting these choppy parts. And that's why Gann always, always, always said, use a stop loss order. Trade with a stop loss order. If you trade without a stop, you're going to lose all your money at some point. So that brings us to step 11, design your end game. How far do you want to go with these Gann studies? There's enough esoteric information to keep you hooked for the rest of your life. In fact, I imagine, if I'm lucky enough to reach old age and I end up in a nursing home somewhere, I'll have my pile of books somewhere. I'll still probably be reading this stuff and having a great time doing it. So there's enough info there. You're not going to say, oh, I've read the last Gann book. I'm all done now. Maybe I'll go back to the beginning. There's enough to keep you going for life. okay? And maybe next life as well. But there is no law that says you must study Gann forever. In fact, there's plenty more to life than just Gann. Gann is just one part of life, and you need to find your balance with it. So think about how far you want to go and design your end game in advance so that you're not stuck there in an endless loop of studying, buying more courses, reading more books, etc. For me, this is my list of targets. I wanted a smart trading plan. I've got that. I wanted to be able to do the annual forecasts as Gann does, and that I showed you at the beginning of this presentation to give you the high-low cycle dates on both major and minor timeframes, and I can do that. I want to be able to get the price targets for all of those turns, and that's something that I'm still working on. I want to be able to get roadmap projection for all timeframes, and that's probably one of the last things that I will learn. I can do roadmaps, but I don't know when it's going to end, and there's a lot of work doing it that way to keep up on all your roadmaps. Finally, I want to know Gann's intraday time and price system. He could tell the time and price of the daily high and low each day, and that gave him the directions. Is it going to be an up day or a down day? And if you've got that information, you can do a lot of really good trading with that. And I believe that it's a combination of all these things, which is how Gann was able to turn $130 into $12,000 in a single month of trading, because he had his dates, he had his price targets, he knew the roadmap projection on his small and large time frames and where to look for the highs and lows and where those highs and lows would come in time and in price, and he traded around those. For me, if I can do all of this, I would be delighted, and I would probably stop studying. I would call it a day. I'm not interested in using Gann to pick lottery numbers. I'm not interested in horse races. I'm only interested in these things in the markets. And finally, step 12, I would ask you to help someone else. And this is a really important thing. And you don't have to wait until you've ended your trading journey to help someone else, but you also have to walk a fair way before you're able to start helping other people. But help someone else. There's a great quote by an Armenian philosopher called Gurdjieff, and it says, "If you help others, you will be helped. Perhaps tomorrow, perhaps in 100 years, but you will be helped. Nature must pay off the debt. It is a mathematical law, and all of life is mathematics." Now, Gann doesn't talk about Gurdjieff, but Gurdjieff is the subject of a couple of books by P.D. Uspensky, and Uspensky is one of the recommended authors on Gann's reading list. So I would suggest that Gann is pointing you down this path. Now, Gann understood this, and I believe that's why Gann wrote his books and wrote his courses, to help people so that he would be helped as well, and so that he would be able to climb up a few more rungs on the ladder of knowledge and continue learning more and more and more. I started this YouTube channel with the idea of putting a couple of videos up as a little bit of help, and as soon as I did that, I received help. And I thought, well, okay, let's see how far this goes. And the more I put up, would you believe I have received an unbelievable amount of help on my trading journey? Help that was unlooked for and unasked for, but very, very valued, okay? So all I'm saying, this is a great principle for life. It's also a great principle for Gann traders as well. At some point on your journey, find a young person who needs the help or wants the help. Gann said there's no greater pleasure in life than helping someone who is trying to help themselves. That often gets overlooked. People say, oh, there's no greater pleasure in life than helping someone. But try helping someone who doesn't want to be helped. Think about Gann's son, John. The story is that he just wanted it all handed to him. He wasn't prepared to put in the work. I can't say that's true or false, so don't hold me to that. But you look at How to Make Profits in Commodities, Gann's book. When he wrote the first edition, John is plastered all over it. Second edition, John is missing completely. Clearly, there's a falling out there. It wouldn't surprise me if that's the reason for the falling out, is that John wanted to know all the answers, but Gann wanted to make him work for that. Imagine that, having W.D. Gann for a father, but he wouldn't teach you. That's a little bit cruel, but I imagine Gann would have given him every opportunity as well and said, do your work, put in the hard yards, and then I'll help you along the way, and maybe he didn't want to do that. So at some point, if you want to receive help, try giving help out to others. You'll be amazed at what comes back to you. So that brings us to the end of a very long video. If you've hung around to the end, thank you for watching. I hope that you found some value in there. I love studying Gann's works. I think it's better than television, video games, sports, and movies all rolled into one. This is a hobby for me. I know that's not for everybody. Not everyone has that same level of enjoyment from it. Maybe it's because I'm a Sagittarius and we love to learn. Who knows? But I love studying this stuff. As a Gann trader, just keep in mind there will be good times and hard times. The hard times are not easy, but they do pass, and the good times do return. So if you find yourself in a hard time, chin up, work hard, and just know that it won't be forever. Commit to this stuff, work hard, and give it time, and you'll be amazed at what it brings into your life. I'd like to sincerely wish you all the best on this journey. I hope that Gann and trading brings you all that you could have ever asked for out of life. And I hope that when that does happen, that you put a little bit back in, firstly by helping others, and secondly with some charity or philanthropic work. If you do have any questions on anything in this presentation, you can email me at aussiedollarman@gmail.com, and I'm happy to have that discussion. If you did find some value in this video, I'd really appreciate it if you could subscribe to the channel, click on the like button, and leave a comment. It does help the video go out to more people. As I said, my intention with this channel is to help people and to spread the work of WD Gann to those who need it and to those who are trying to improve their lives. And by liking and commenting, it just shows the YouTube algorithm some engagement and that there is some value in the video, and it will push that video out to more people. That's all for this video. Any questions, you can email me. Otherwise, I will see you in the Forex form guide, which comes out 7 p.m. every Sunday night, Sydney time. So until then, I wish you all the best with your trading, all the best with your week ahead, and bye for now.